All right, and hello. Welcome to Nursing News You Can Use at 5. I'm Tina Baxter, your host, and I want to thank you for tuning in today on this May 8th, 2024. And we have some exciting news coming up for you today, but we're going to go ahead and get in with our with our affirmation. And I love this. This one says, I am discovering new talents, or I'm discovering talents I did not know I had. What fun life is. I am discovering talents I did not know I had. What fun life is. And here's a great way for you to discover some talents that you may not have known that you have. If you're a nurse and you're looking to start your own business, join the Nurse Shark Academy and watch us on our other show, the Nurse Shark Academy show, and our podcast on YouTube and Podbean, and you can too find out what hidden talents you may have to start your own business. All right, let's get started for today. But before we jump into our news, I want to wish a happy Nurses Day, Nurses Week to all our fellow nurses here. We want to celebrate you. So I'm going to go ahead and show this quick video. Happy Nurses Week from the Nurse Shark Academy and Baxter Professional Services. Nurses, you deserve to be celebrated. Come feel the sun with the Nurse Shark Academy. Join us at the nursesharkacademy.biz. All right, I wanted to share that with you, and that is coming from the heart. I love nurses, and I love to be able to promote nurses and what we do as nurses. And so with that, let's get into the news. So our first article comes up here. It says, Fate of Game Changer, Women's Health Care Bill in Hands of Missouri Senate. Okay, make this a little bit bigger so I can see it. There we go. A new poll found a majority of Missourians support birth control access, but some concerned lawmakers may try to make contraceptive availability more difficult. A wide-ranging women's health care bill that stalled in the House for months over concerns about expanding coverage for birth control is a step away from the governor's desk, though dysfunction in the Senate could derail its chances of becoming law. The bill, an effort by a bipartisan group of 5 women lawmakers across the House and Senate, would be a, quote, game changer for women's health, said State Representative Melanie Stinnett, a Republican from Springfield. With provisions focused on annual supply of birth control, congenital syphilis, mammograms, STIs, treatment, rate test kits, the legislation is sponsored by Stinnett, State Senator Elaine Gannon, a DeSoto Republican, State Representative Tara Peters, a Rollo Republican, State Senator Tracy McCreary, an Ovalette Democrat, and State Representative Patty Lewis, a Kansas City Democrat. We need to focus on women's health, children's health, babies' health, said Gannon. We have to do whatever we can to produce healthy people. Though it got an initial committee hearing in January, the House didn't pass the bill and send it to the Senate until late April. The delay was caused by a number of Republicans expressing concerns that birth control could be used as an abortive agent, the bill sponsors said. Since passing the House with approval from 60 Republicans and 45 Democrats, it has moved quickly in the Senate and was approved unanimously by the Chamber's Emerging Issues Committee on Monday. This bill was on life support several times as it moved its way forward, Lewis said. But no matter what side of the aisle you're on, it's politically advantageous to support women's health care right now. The sponsors remain hopeful the bill can make it across the finish line before the session ends on May 17th. But progress in the Senate is stalled as infighting between the Freedom Caucus and Senate Republican leadership has left the chamber with little to show as they run up against a deadline to pass the state budget. Also hanging in the limbo is a bill that would make it more difficult to pass citizen-led constitutional amendments, legislation Democrats have staunchly opposed, fearing it could inhibit an abortions right proposal expressed to land on that November ballot. The sponsors of the Women's Health Care Bill argue that unlike other legislation, there should not be controversial and thus shouldn't be a casualty of Senate gridlock. So we'll see what happens with this bill, but I wanted to make us aware as nurses of what's going on. And if you are in that state, please contact your state Senate leadership to get this bill moving forward. Okay, here is our next story, and this is a big one. Um, we've been covering what's been going on with Steward Healthcare for a while, and this came out, of course, and as one influencer pointed out on the beginning of Nurses Week and on Nurses Day in particular. But I digress. This is from Reuters, and this is a bankrupt Steward Health puts its hospitals up for sale, discloses $9 billion in debt. So let's go on and hear about what's going on with Steward. More happening. So it says bankrupt Steward Healthcare has put all of its 31 hospitals up for sale, hoping to finalize transactions by the end of the summer to address its $9 billion in total liabilities, its attorney said at a Tuesday court hearing in Houston. Steward, which filed for bankruptcy protection on Monday, hopes to keep all of its hospitals open over the long term. Steward attorney Ray Schrock told U.S. bankruptcy judge Chris Lopez, who is overseeing the Chapter 11 proceedings. Our goal remains that there are 0 hospitals closed on our watch. There are going to be a change in ownership in many hospitals. We recognize that, but we don't want to see any of these communities fail to be served. The privately owned company closed a hospital in Massachusetts earlier this year, and officials in that state have criticized Steward's management and its former private equity owners for making short-sighted financial decisions that undermines patients' care. Massachusetts officials in particular criticized a series of transactions that sold off the company's real estate and saddled it with long-term rent costs at its hospitals. And again, we've talked about this in the past. Is not just who owns the hospital, but who owns the land that the hospital sits on. And so, for you to understand, if you haven't been keeping up, and this is new to you, let's talk about a local situation that we hear, not with a hospital, but with our local mall here in Anderson. Anderson Mall has been bought by a developer. That person owns the mall, owns everything that's in the mall, except they do not own the land upon which they sit. And so therein lies some of the problems. So again, here it says, in court documents filed before the hearing, Steward said it had over $9 billion in total liabilities, including $1.2 billion in loans, $6.6 billion in long-term rent obligations, nearly $1 billion in unpaid bills from medical vendors and suppliers, and $290 million in unpaid employee wages and benefits. So let me stop you right there, because I think that's where you need to hear this. Not only do they owe vendors, which has caused some problems, but they also owe their employees. Schrock said Steward has real value despite carrying a $9 billion debt load. The company had $6 billion in annual revenue before filing for bankruptcy, and it has been pursuing a sale of its physician group, Steward Healthcare, to United Health, a subsidiary of Optum, for an amount that has not been disclosed. Steward is putting all of its hospitals up for sale and intends to hold auctions on June the 28th, auction for its hospitals outside Florida, and July 30th for its 9 hospitals in Florida. Schrock said those timelines were negotiated as part of the new $75 million bankruptcy loan, and that Steward would seek more time to sell its hospitals if necessary. So we'll keep you abreast of what's happening with that. But here's another interesting thing that came out of this. So here's an update. It says this is from ABC5 out of Massachusetts, and it says Steward Healthcare, the operator of the third largest hospital system in Massachusetts and one of the state's largest employers, is aiming to sell its Massachusetts hospitals before the end of June, but the company's lawyer said the timeline may be aggressive. The company declared bankruptcy on Monday, seeking legal protection to restructure its debt while leaving its hospitals open. So again, Ray Schrock, the attorney for Steward, has said that we've got a June 25th deadline and option for all hospitals other than Florida, and then a sale hearing. We'll see how the timing goes. We'll see whether or not this is revisited. We're going to keep our word and do everything we can to meet it. Steward intends to hold auctions on June 28th for its hospitals outside of Florida and July 30th for its 9 hospitals in Florida. However, Schrock told the bankruptcy court that the timeline for closing was not feasible. I'm here to tell you now, you can't close these hospital sales with a timeline of that the end of June. It's not feasible. The Florida deadlines we think are much more realistic. So again, Reuters had reported that Judge Chris Lopez allowed Stewart to borrow $75 million from Medical Properties Trust, which owns the real estate where Stewart's hospitals are located, and is owed $6.6 billion on leases that run until 2041. Stewart hopes to borrow an additional $225 million from Medical Properties Trust later in its bankruptcy. State officials also have launched a website to distribute information about the situation. So, Stewart's 8 hospitals in Massachusetts are St. Elizabeth's in Brighton, Kearney Hospital in Dorchester, Good Samaritan Medical Center in Brockton, Holy Family Hospital in Methuen, and Haverhill Hospital in Haverhill, Morton Hospital in Taunton, Neshoba Valley Medical Center in Ayer, Norwood Hospital in St. Anne's in Fall River. The company said it does not expect any interruption to day-to-day operations and that the bankruptcy filing was, quote, a necessary measure to allow the company to continue to provide necessary care for its patients in their communities without disruption. Our goal remains that there are 0 hospitals closed on our watch. So we'll see what happens as this story moves forward. But here's another follow-up story. One second. Here it is. This is a story that was done by the Enterprise. And it says, who is Ralph De La Torre? The CEO of Steward Healthcare with a $40 million yacht. Once a respected cardiac surgeon, Dr. Ralph De La Torre, chairman and CEO of Steward Healthcare, has been publicly criticized for living a lavish lifestyle, owning not 1 but 2 yachts while running his company into the ground. De La Torre bought his $40 million yacht after Steward sold its hospital properties to Medical Trust Properties, or MTP, a real estate investment trust in 2016, a deal that resulted in a massive payday for executives while leaving the Steward-operated hospitals to face steep annual rents as they transition to being tenants under MTP's ownership. On Monday, those financial troubles came to a head when Steward filed for a Chapter 11 bankruptcy. So again, as I say, follow the money. When De La Torre first started Steward in collaboration with Subarus Capital Management, a New York-based private equity firm, his self-described goal was to create an affordable approach to healthcare that served vulnerable populations. Instead, doctors, nurses, and elected officials have criticized the for-profit network for prioritizing their own profits over patient care. Here's everything you need to know about the man behind Steward's downfall. Okay, here we go. So, De La Torre bought the $40 million 190-foot yacht named the Amaral a few years ago, according to McGrory's reporting for the Globe. De La Torre Others yacht is a $15 million 90-foot sporting fishing boat named the Jericho, or Jericho. The Amaral is a massive 6-bedroom yacht that costs about $4 million a year to run. Whew. That's just to run the thing. That's not to own it. That's just to run it. It costs $40 million to buy it and $4 million a year just to use it. And so Steward Healthcare. So according to the American Prospect, Steward acquired at least 2 business jets and a private suite at Dallas AA Arena, where the NBA's Mavericks play. In 2008, De La Torre became the CEO of Caritas Christi Healthcare, a struggling hospital network in Massachusetts. A few years later, he made a deal with Subarus Capital Management to start Steward Healthcare and invest money into struggling hospitals. De La Torre graduated from Duke University in 1988 and got his medical degree from a joint program between Harvard Medical School and the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in 1992. Before his stint as CEO, he was the founder and CEO of Cardiovascular Institute at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center and Cardiovascular Management Associates, according to his biography on his website. He also worked as chief cardiac surgery of a BIDMC. So, according to reporting by the American Prospect, an individual familiar with Stewart's finances estimated that he makes about $16 million per year. In 2020, De La Torre bought Stewart from Subarus for $335 million, but with his own stake in the investment company, used Stewart's cash to pay himself a $100 million dividend. According to the Globe, De La Torre lives in a Dallas mansion and shares a neighborhood with former President George W. Bush and Mark Cuban, owner of Dallas Mavericks and longtime panelist of ABC's Shark Tank. When De La Torre was living in Boston, he lived in a 7-bedroom home in West Newton that he sold for more than $6 million in 2013. According to reporting by the Globe, De La Torre met his first wife, Wing Shong De La Torre, a native of Hong Kong, while he was in medical school. They married in 2004, had twin boys in 2008. In 2018, she filed for divorce. He later remarried Nicole Acosta, a self-described real estate representative, according to the Globe. This is their reporting. So this is a little bit of what's happening and why maybe some of these things are going on. I'm just reporting the news. I don't write the news, nor do I make the news, but this is what I'm reporting from what I have. And so that raises then some very interesting questions about selling a company and making that big of an investment where you get to make sure that you get the payout and the dividend. So I'm not sure if there's anything illegal about that. I don't know, but it certainly is suspicious to see. And we're going to see what the state has to say about that as they're looking into this. All right, let's move on. And let's talk about long-term care. So here we go. So this is coming from Ignite's Long-Term Care News. And it says, backlog hospitals want back into the nursing home business without the hassles of ownership. Many hospitals and health systems that have cut back on their own skilled nursing capabilities over the last 2 decades are now looking to take back additional control over their post-acute processes. Experts say that demand presents new patient and revenue opportunities for skilled nursing providers who can position themselves properly, both from clinical and legal perspectives. So we'll see. Backlog hospitals want back into the nursing home business. It says hospital and SNF collaborations may allow both providers more control over their bed supplies and the care transitions for post-acute patients. Research indicates that some of these collaborations may also lead to lower costs, shorter lengths of stay, and better outcomes for patients. This is from Stephanie Doyle, an associate attorney working on the Baker Donaldson Hospital SNF initiative. A significant number of hospitals have converted their SNF units into other bed types or siphoned off on-campus nursing homes to buy new buyers, to new buyers in recent years, citing increased regulatory scrutiny, the high cost of skilled nursing care, staffing shortages, and most recently, the pandemic. But now that they are finding it more difficult to discharge patients who are ready to leave the acute care setting, some are considering new, albeit limited, ways to get back into the SNF game. Modern arrangements might include management and lease agreements, bed reservation contracts, sharing of clinicians, and more. In Western Massachusetts, Care One teamed up with Bay State Medical Center to share premium labor costs and reserve beds for short-term post-acute patients being discharged from the hospital. The arrangement led to the nursing home's reopening of a 16-bed unit it had closed due to staff shortages, and also boosted occupancy from the mid-70% range to the 88% average. At York, PA-based WellSpan Health, leaders last year started a review of post-acute strategies under the guidance of Health Dimensions Group. The 8-hospital system needed solutions that would counter increasing acute care lengths of stay, addressing having too few licensed and staffed post-acute care beds to which it could send patients and meet rehospitalization and other goals of its value based care partners. So, if you don't know what that means, basically, if you were in the hospital, let's say that you were there for pneumonia, and you get discharged from the hospital and you have to come back in for an exacerbation of pneumonia, you get back, you get worse, the hospital then doesn't get reimbursed for that. So because they uh, let you go too soon, something happened, or you get a sore or pressure ulcer in the hospital, they may not get reimbursed for those things. So they're looking at those patient outcomes to say that did the person get better? Did they prevent complications? And then they meet certain criteria that they can get reimbursed for. So the system had developed its own plan in 2015, but leaders are looking to be more innovative in a post-pandemic reality that has driven up hospital length of stay among Pennsylvania's 15 hospitals by the average of 2 days per patient. We have immense focus on care coordination and focus on how things being right in the post-acute setting because it's crucial to maintain and achieve good outcomes for the patient's recovery standpoint, as well as to make sure that they're not getting readmitted back to the hospital. So basically, they want you out, not coming back. Okay. So the WellSpan, this is what's going on with WellSpan. It says that system owns an institutional rehabilitation facility and has a WellSpan at home service line, but it has no skilled nursing beds of its own. So WellSpan created its first preferred provider network in 2018, and now it stretches across 5 counties that the system serves. But that's no longer enough, and the acute provider wants to do more to streamline its direct access to skilled beds and the geographic footprint, while realizing that nursing homes are facing their own staffing and margin pressures. So that's the other issue is that now nursing homes are facing increased pressure to accept patients, but they have the staff to cover them. So the hospital wants to discharge the clinically stable patients whose Medicaid applications are pending. The hospital shepherds through that paperwork, reducing the risk and workload for selected skilled nursing providers who participate while also giving them needed census. The system also plans to grow its hospital at home and post acute home care volume by 75% over the next 3 years. But even so, they acknowledge that the demographics prove that the system will still need just as much, if not more, access to institutional post acute care in the years to come. Because as we all know, the baby boomers are just getting older. All right, so there's more to this story, and you can certainly pick that up on McKnight's Long-Term Care News if you want to hear more about this. But that's an interesting development where now they're trying to work around having access to the beds without taking on the legal liability of running the facility. So we'll see what happens with this. We'll kind of keep an eye on that and see what's going on. And there's more to this story, but we just don't have the time to continue with it. So as we're talking about nursing home, and right before we go to our first break, it says, this is from KFF Health News, Biden's nursing home staffing rule surfaces horror stories. The Biden administration's plan to set minimum staffing levels for nursing homes prompted comments from more than 46,500 people and organizations, including residents of homes and nurses with harrowing stories about conditions inside. So as reported, it says one resident purchased a bullhorn with a siren to get nurses and aides' attention because he was often left sitting in his own stool. Another comment, nurses at one facility declared a med holiday, according to a dietitian, and threw away all the drugs for a shift because they didn't have time to pass them out. Second, another comment, a day shift nurse found a resident choking on vomit and having seizures after a night when there had only been one nurse and one aide on duty for 100 residents. Hundreds of comments like these are submitted the resolve of officials at the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services last month to stick to plans to set minimum numbers of registered nurses and nurse aides for homes, despite the industry's insistence it's infeasible. CMS added a third mandate for minimum total staffing. The agency also toughened requirements for self-assessments each home must perform to determine whether they have enough skilled workers to properly care for the residents. The assessment can mean a home with residents who are especially ill or in need of extensive assistance should exceed minimum staffing mandates. President Biden's crackdown on nursing home staffing is among the most significant healthcare regulatory moves he's pursuing in what could be his last year in the White House. That it comes in an election year when the president is counting on improving his support among older voters and their families only raises the stakes, though nursing homes have until 2026 to come into compliance. Labor unions representing nurses and aides have strongly backed the plan. The industry, as well as rank and file nurses, raised concerns about finding enough staff to meet the new federal mandate. A licensed practical nurse from rural Minnesota wrote, "We currently offer sign-on bonuses, referral bonuses, higher wages than we ever had, and still no applications are received." So we'll see what happens because the final regulations again haven't come out and they're not quite there. Most advocates think the staffing minimums are too low, but I'm thinking if we can increase them across the board, that would be great. So just wanted to share that little bit of news. And then we have our next story. Nursing home staffing must be fixed. Democratic lawmakers tell execs at major chains. So here we go. This is coming from USA Today. 3 U.S. senators and 2 U.S. representatives have called out the corporate spending of 3 large nursing home companies amid the industry's opposition to the Biden administration's rule to set minimum staffing levels. In letters sent Sunday to executives of the 3 large chains, Senators Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, and Richard Blumenthal, and Representatives Jane Sherkowski and Lloyd Dodgen questioned the nursing home spending on executive compensation, stock buybacks, and dividends as the industry protests a new staffing rule for nursing homes. The letter, signed by the 4 Democrats and Sanders, a Vermont independent, said National Health Corporation, the Ensign Group, and Brookdale Senior Living Incorporated spent nearly $650 million on executive pay, stock buybacks, and dividends since 2018. The lawmakers said such spending undermines the claim that nursing homes cannot afford to pay for enough staff to meet the rule. So again, last month, the Biden administration announced a new rule that requires nursing homes that receive federal payments for care to meet minimum staffing requirements for registered nurses and nurse aides. The rule requires nursing homes to provide each resident a minimum of 0.55 hours of care from a registered nurse and 2.45 hours from a certified nursing assistant every day. The minimum staffing levels will be phased in over the next 2 to 3 years. Biden administration officials said the measure is necessary to limit cases of resident neglect or delays in care, a lingering concern that was exposed when more than 200,000 nursing home residents and staff died from COVID-19 in the first 2 years of the pandemic. A U.S. Today analysis found that just 160 skilled nursing facilities out of about 14,500 would have met the new requirements every day last summer. The Nursing Home Group, American Healthcare Association, vowed to defend nursing homes and explore all available options in response to the federal rule. Mark Parkinson, president and CEO, said the rule creates, quote, an impossible task for nursing homes, which would need to hire hundreds of thousands of additional caregivers amid a nationwide nursing shortfall. Even representatives of nonprofit nursing homes and facilities said the new minimum federal staffing standards will be difficult to implement. Leading Edge, an association of nonprofit providers of aging services, said workforce shortage and the cost of recruiting, training, and retaining staff could make it difficult for facilities to meet the federal staffing rule. So we will see what happens. Again, there's also some questions here because they were asking, it says, despite industry concerns about nursing and caregiver shortages, the 3 senators and 2 representatives said the number of nurses passing licensing tests has grown steadily since 2017. Turnover is high due to poor working conditions, understaffing in facilities, and low pay, conditions that you are in the position to rectify, the letter said. According to the letter, the three publicly traded nursing home chains spent the following amounts from 2018 to 2023 on non-care expenses. So National Healthcare Corp spent more than 210 million dollars on stock buybacks and dividends and 26.5 million dollars on executive compensation. Ensign Group spent 145.2 million dollars on stock buybacks and dividends and 144.8 million dollars on executive compensation. Brookdale Senior Living spent 67.7 million dollars on stock buybacks and dividends and 48.9 million dollars on executive compensation. The senators and representatives demand that the three companies answer how they determine executive pay and bonuses and whether such compensation is influenced by quality of care or profits. The letter also seeks answers on the three companies' average pay and tenure for their registered nurses and nurse aides. The letters also demand that companies provide any complaints or comments submitted by their nurses over staffing levels and pay. The lawmaker also asked the companies to detail lobbying or advocacy spending, including payments that may have been used to lobby against a minimum federal staffing rule. So we will see what comes out of all of this, but we're geared up for a big fight, and we'll see what happens. Let's go ahead and take our next break. Bullying, poor staffing, stagnant wages, no work life balance. Stop being eaten alive. Find your joy, strength, and happiness. Become the leader you are always meant to be. Nurse entrepreneurs are using their skills to launch successful businesses every day. Make your dreams come true. Join the Nurse Shark Academy and come feel the sun at the nursesharkacademy.biz. All right, let's get back into the news. I'm not sure exactly what's happening in this story, but I'm not sure what brought this on. But I did find it interesting, so I kind of wanted to share it. It says Louisville man charged with arson after setting fire inside nursing home room, police say. But let's look deeper into the story because it's kind of disturbing. So Justin Camposano, an employee at Valhalla Post Acute on Shelby Station Drive in East Louisville, was arrested May 1st after the fire inside of a room at the nursing home. According to his arrest citation, Capisano is accused of intentionally starting the fire in a room at the facility. A witness, police said, heard him say 45 minutes before the fire started, "I'm going to get that old out of here." Police said Camposano is on surveillance video leaving the room just before the fire alarm went off. According to Dan Kramer, a spokesperson for Valhalla Post Acute says, "The safety of our residents and staff remains our number one priority. The fire being reported in the media was immediately extinguished, no injuries were sustained, and local emergency personnel responded quickly. The person charged with regarding this event was removed from campus that evening and will not return. By law, we perform background checks for all employees and are not in violation of hiring ineligible individuals. Our internal investigation is ongoing and we are fully cooperating with law enforcement as well. Moving forward, we'll continue to focus on the residents and staff members' well-being." So here's the crazy thing. It says the man who lived in the room, Daniel Fisher, said Tuesday he was at the hospital dealing with some stomach issues when the fire was set. The fire inspector came up to the hospital and told me a fire that started in my room, Fisher said. Jordan Udis, the Anchorage Middleton Fire and EMS, said the damages were minimal, but could have been a lot worse. If the fire was still very, very small and suddenly we have 10 or 15 or 20 patients that have smoke inhalation, I mean, that instantly becomes a mass casualty incident. Fisher was moved to a new room. Although Camposano was fired, he still has concerns. I am just a nervous wreck right now, he said. To me, it was personal. He wants to kill me. That's the way I feel about it. So knowing, seeing that, it says, I'm just wondering. I just brought this up because I'm like, what's going on in the heads of our staff here in nursing home in the facility, and that is very frightful. So as we hear more about this, because I there's got to be more to this story, right? I mean, was a worker on drugs? Did they have an altercation previously? What brought him to the fact that he wanted to start a fire and in this man's particular room? We don't know. Coming out of Ohio, let's go over to the next part, next door to us. It says bill proposed to help reduce the strain on Ohio nursing staff. This is House Bill 285. Nurses and lawmakers gathered Tuesday for the first hearing of a bill that would change minimum staffing standard for nurses in Ohio. House Bill 285, sponsored by State's Representative Haraz Ganbari, a Republican from Perrysburg, and Elgin Rogers Jr., a Democrat from Toledo, would have committees of nurses create standard nurse to patient ratios. In the hearing, Gambari said the ratios could range from one nurse for every one patient to one nurse for every six patients. Hospitals would have 2 years to meet the standards. Hospitals identified by the director as being specifically in rural areas would have 4 years to meet the standards. The bill also would create a $20 million loan to grant program to help encourage nurses to stay in the state. Ganabari said nurses would receive up to $3,000 per year schooling, and if they stay in Ohio to work for at least 5 years, they would not have to repay the loans. Rogers said there was a need for this legislation due to the amount of nurses leaving the field. It says many of them are leaving the field because of the stress of the position, the mental health position portion, and oftentimes we heard nurses say that they're understaffed and overworked. So it is the same story at every refrain. I'm just wondering, when are we going to listen? So this is coming from Next Star Media News. It says nurses faced with low pay, high cost of living. These cities are the worst. A variety of factors have contributed to the national nursing shortage that has affected the U.S. over the past several years. One of these factors in particular is adequate pay or lack thereof. The search for a better salary has caused some nurses to travel the country or to drop out of the profession altogether. Uncompetitive pay has also caused nurses across the country to grab their picket signs and go on strike for raises and better working conditions. The average salary for a registered nurse in the U.S. is $86,000 in gross pay. Of the metro areas, the Money Geek analyzed, less than one third surpassed the average. When adjusted for taxes and cost of living index, you're left with $65,000 and $414 on average. So for metro areas where registered nurses are making the least, it isn't always that the salary is low. In many cases, is that the cost of living and taxes in these areas affect take-home pay drastically. And I can say that is the truth. That cost of living has gone up for everyone. It's really bad. So it says, for example, at number one, Washington, D.C.'s pre-tax salary is $98,000, but the adjusted take-home pay is $48,000, according to Money Geek's analysis. That's nearly half of the salary lost to high cost of living and taxes. Honolulu isn't far behind DC with a $50,000 adjusted take-home pay, but in this case, the gross pay is much higher at almost $134,000. The metro areas that are the toughest for registered nurses after you consider taxes and local cost of living are, we have Washington, D.C. area, so going from 98,000 to 48,000 roughly. Honolulu, 138,820 down to $50,134. So you're spending most of your money on cost of living and taxes. You have nothing to live off of. Boston, Average salary is 1,360, and that drops down to 52,591. So you can see the drastic drop. Huntsville, Alabama, the average salary is $63,480, and your take home after cost of living is $54,663. Salt Lake City, Utah, it's about 80,000, drops down to 55,000. New Orleans, 81,000, drops down to 55,000 roughly. Chicago, 85, drops down to 56. Miami, Fort Lauderdale, 83,000, drops down to 56. Utah, Provo, Orem, Utah, 78,000 roughly, drops down to 57,000. And then Portland, South Portland, Maine, 84,000, drops down to 58, 55. So on the other end, two states in particular have several metro areas that surpass the average salary for registered nurses: California and Texas. California has four cities ranked in the top four for registered nurse salaries after the cost of living and taxes are taken out. The Sacramento area finished at number one with registered nurses take-home pay about $88,847, almost $10,000 more than any other metro city in the country. Texas had three cities in the top 10, with Houston sliding to number two at 79,000. So you have Sacramento at the highest. So here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. Sacramento, their pre-tax average salary is $157,000, but the adjusted take-home pay is 88. Houston, I think Houston you might take a second look here. Houston's salary was $93,000, but their take-home was $79,000. Modesto, California, their pay was $131,000, but their take-home was $78,000. So you can see this drastic drop, though. But again, looking at it, and then believe it or not, Little Rock is at number 10, $79,300 with a take-home of $74,000. So it says with the salary for nurses varying so much depending on where in the country they work, there has been a growing trend in travel nurses across the U.S. The latest National Healthcare Retention and RN Staffing Report from NSI, or Nursing Solutions Incorporated, shows that the average travel nurse can make up to $102 an hour, or a little over $212,000 annually, depending on where they work. That is more than double what the average registered nurse makes. Most travel nurses work 13-week contracts and are free to move from one role to another with each new contract, meaning that they can choose where to go to make the most money by year's end. Factors such as the time of year or crisis in an area can also boost pay for travel nurses. During COVID, some travel nurses were making up to $5,000 per week. A look at the demographics for travel nurses by Zippia shows that they would make, on average, in each county in the country if they were to work there for the year. So, again, this is something that we know. Wages is an issue. It's because the cost of living is high and having to pay taxes and all these things. It is a big problem. And so then, on paper, it looks like, oh, nurses make a good salary. But when you look at what it costs and add on the fact that low staffing, the mental toil that it takes on you, sometimes it's, you look at it and you're like, maybe I'm better off doing something else. And that's what a lot of nurses are faced with every day. So this is coming out of Wisconsin, this story from Wisconsin Public Radio, and it says Wisconsin school nurses say increased Medicaid reimbursement will provide more stable future. School nurses in Wisconsin say they need more financial support to provide the health services needed by students. Leaders of the Wisconsin Association of School Nurses met with state legislatures last week to talk about the unfinished business from this year's legislative session, which ended in March. Lawmakers did not act on a proposal to allow school districts to receive all federal Medicaid funding reimbursed for school-based services like physical therapy and skilled nursing. It's a change proposed by Governor Tony Evers in his 2023 to 25 state budget. Under the current state law, schools only receive 60% of the federal reimbursement for these services, while the rest go into the state. Jamie Tresbiatowski, president of the Wisconsin Association of School Nurses said the rate is much lower than what county or community based programs receive for the same types of care. Nurse Jamie says the lower reimbursement rate makes it difficult for schools to maintain these services. So she goes on to say that when they need to do something different with their budgeting, frequently they're going to try to cut off some of these ancillary support services. So students lose that equity piece, lose that nursing or other types of ancillary support that they need to make sure that they're getting equitable access to their education. She said allowing all of the federal funding for the school-based services to return to the districts would create more stable funding for the school nursing positions. So we'll see what happens and follow up with this story in Wisconsin. Okay, and more positive news as we get ready to take our next break. It says six sisters study nursing together consider becoming midwives, and this is coming out of Long Island. So it says six sisters are studying to become nurses together at Adelphi University, and when they complete the program, they may go on to study midwifery together. So Alexandria, Danielle, Dominique, Gabriella, Lauren, and Nathalia Lawrence created a stir when they enrolled in the Bachelor of Science of Nursing program at Adelphi together. Ranging in age from their late teens to their 20s, the sisters come from a tight-knit family that has grappled with homelessness and housing insecurity since their parents lost their home in Queens more than 10 years ago. With the goal of becoming nurses, the Lawrence sisters, who were homeschooled while moving between temporary homes, earned their General Education Development Test or GED diplomas in 2019 and began studying together at Nassau Community College. They went on to earn a Bachelor of Science degrees in Public Health at State University of New York, and they expect to expand with master's degrees in Public Health from SUNY Downstate Health Sciences University in Brooklyn by the summer. Strong grades helped the Lawrence sisters earn scholarships to Adelphi, I don't know why I can't say that, Adelphi University, where the six began taking classes this semester toward their nursing degree. They have 4 more semesters to go after this one. So I wanted to say congratulations to those 6 sisters and welcome to the field. And there's more in this story. If you want to read this engaging story, please share and do that. All right. And here is our next story. National Nurses Week 2024, RN reflects on the state of profession and calls for change. Monday, May 6th kicks off the National Nurses Week, and it gives folks an opportunity to show their love and appreciation for the people who take care of the sick, injured, and dying. From neonatal nurses who welcome newborns into the world to hospice nurses that provide peace and comfort to their dying patients, nurses play a crucial role in the medical industry. According to the American Association of Colleges of Nurses, nurses make up the largest part of the healthcare workforce, are the primary health providers for patients in hospitals, and give the most long-term care in the nation. Restaurants and chains like Chipotle and Dunkin' are offering discounts and coupons to the medical professionals to show their appreciation for what they do. But experts are saying that it isn't enough, and what nurses need right now goes beyond discounts. Again, this is coming out of USA Today. It says, Catherine Kennedy, a registered nurse and the vice president of National Nurses United, told USA Today that there needs to be a systemic change on the federal level to give nurses the best chance to care for their patients. A study published by the National Library of Medicine states that in 2021, nurses would work an average of 8.2 hours of paid overtime and 5.8 hours of unpaid overtime per week that year, making up the equivalent of more than 9,000 full-time jobs. According to a different study that analyzed a poll sent in from 29,472 registered nurses and 24,061 licensed practical nurses across 45 different states, found that 62% of nurses said they saw an increase in their workload during COVID-19 pandemic. According to those polled, they felt the following at least a few times a week or every day. 50.8% felt emotionally drained. 56.4% felt used up, 49.7% felt fatigued, 45.1% felt burnt out, and 29.4% felt at the end of their rope. Despite being labeled heroes during the COVID 19, Kennedy said nurses were not given the support they needed to do their jobs properly. Nurses were in tears because they could not provide the proper care. So a lot of nurses left nursing in other states because of that. According to Kennedy, nurses have always struggled to fight for better working conditions. But when cases of COVID surged and the world shut down in 2020, it got worse. She said nurses had to fight to make sure that they had the proper equipment they needed to protect themselves, and asked that that hasn't changed 4 years later. Hospitals and medical institutions are using the same techniques they did at the height of the pandemic to cut costs, and it comes at the expense of nurses' safety. But she adds that having to fight to be properly staffed, errors in patient admissions, and racial discrimination play a factor in how well nurses can do their job. Kennedy said that it's important to allow nurses to do what we do best, and that's taking care of patients, and we can't do that if we don't have safe working conditions. According to National Nurses United, when nurses are forced to focus on too many patients, patients are at high risk of the following: preventable medication errors, avoidable complications, falls, injuries, pressure sores, longer hospital stays, higher numbers of hospital readmissions, and death. To avoid complications related to overwork, exhaustion, and burnout, the union supports the Nurse Staffing Standards for Hospital Patient Safety and Quality Care Act of 2023, which is in 11113 in House Representative 2530. Although the act was introduced a year ago in March of 2023, it's still awaiting approval. If passed, the act will require hospitals to enforce a nurse to patient ratio and limit the number of patients a nurse can be assigned. So there's more to this story. Please head on over to the news site and pick it up from USA Today. Let's take our final break before we wrap up. Bullying, poor staffing, stagnant wages, no work-life balance. Stop being eaten alive. Find your joy, strength, and happiness. Become the leader you are always meant to be. Nurse entrepreneurs are using their skills to launch successful businesses every day. Make your dreams come true. Join the Nurse Shark Academy and come feel the sun at thenurssharkacademy.biz. All right, and let's get into one of our last stories coming up. Sorry, my computer decided just now to not respond. But as we get on, as we're waiting for this to finish up and get to where we need to go, I do want to thank everybody for tuning in and just give you a little sneak peek of what's going to happen coming up. So tomorrow we'll be having our very special release of our podcast, the Nurse Shark Academy show, and we're going to highlight the Black Nurses Association of Anderson. So tune in to that. You can head on over to Podbean or our YouTube channel to tune in for that. But that will be coming up tomorrow. So that will be going out tomorrow. So I'm excited about that. And it looks like it's not wanting to cooperate. So we will try it again. Here we go. All right, and so there we've got two last stories. The first one is coming from the good old Indiana out of Terre Haute. This is about Ivy Tech. It says Ivy Tech, Terre Haute celebrates Nurses Week with high rate of nursing students who pass their exam. Okay, and it's fighting me. All right, so I want to say congratulations to the nursing students from Terre Haute who did pass their NCLEX. I think that's wonderful. And then our last story is coming from out of Jacksonville. And this is the story of a nurse who's completed her tour of duty, as we say. Jacksonville nurse celebrated a 51-year career comes to a close. These, these are all terms used to describe former NFL quarterback Tom Brady, who's widely accepted as the greatest quarterback to ever play the game of football. For the staff at Christus Health Jacksonville, those terms can be used for one of his biggest fans, nurse Jackie Taylor. And so she was described as MVP, GOAT, and champion. For 51 years, including 23 at her current location, Taylor has nursed East Texans. On Tuesday, she worked her last shift, not knowing her coworkers had a surprise tailgate party for her. Her teammates even borrowed her Tom Brady cutout. Why is this Texas nurse a fan of number 12, you ask? Because he's such a good football player and good looking also, said Taylor. Taylor is a recent recipient of the Daisy Lifetime Achievement Award, one of the highest honors in nursing. She even has her own MVP trophy in the shape of the Lombardi. She said, I'm the greatest nurse of all time. I mean, nobody can match it, just like nobody can match Tom Brady, said Taylor. I'm not sure if I'm deserving of it, but I thank them anyway. Just like players who win their own Lombardi, Taylor has some plans for retirement. She says, I'm going to Disney World. So, congratulations to Nurse Taylor, and thank you for your service and all that you've done over the years in taking care of your patients. And with that, I want to say good night. Thank you for tuning in to the Nurse Shark Academy show. Excuse me, for Nursing News You Can Use show. And don't forget to follow us on YouTube and like and subscribe so that you can get all of our news for this show. And then also, don't forget to follow us on the Nurse Shark Academy show, the podcast, where we talk to nurse business owners and leaders. I want to thank you for tuning in, and thank you for those that are joining us on our Facebook channel. And I want to thank you for all that you do and for being with us. You have a great rest of your night. Nurses, are you ready for more? My mission is for you to own your seat at the table of nurse entrepreneurship, gaining confidence, skills, and the freedom to live your life on your own terms. Assisting you in achieving your goals through tailored advice, continuous learning, and a collaborative approach is at the heart of everything I do. Stop being eaten alive. Come feel the sun. Be a nurse shark. And good night, and see you next week.